call this meeting to order. And Haley, if you would post the flag of the United States, thank you. There we are.
Nice,
And,
yeah.
Let's all recite the Pledge of Allegiance, if we don't mind.
Right.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag
flag of the United States of
of
America
America,
and to the
the
republic
republic for
for
which
which it stands, one nation, under God, with
it's
liberty
indivisible,
and justice for all.
this is wrong.
I thought it's been a while since we did the Pledge of Allegiance, and I thought this would be a good time to remind ourselves that despite everything that's going on, we do live in a fairly special nation, and where we will strive perhaps with a greater sense of heart and caring to achieve liberty and justice for all in our nation. And last week, I read a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and since then, there was another unfortunate killing of a Black man by law enforcement, and this time it was in Atlanta, Georgia, which happens to be the birthplace of Martin Luther King. So I thought I would just read that quote one more time, if you don't mind. So this is Martin. I refuse to accept the view that mankind is so tragically bound to the starless midnight of racism and war that the bright daybreak of peace and brotherhood can never become a reality. I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word. And I concur with that 100%. And let's all hope that we're moving toward that type of world and that type of existence with each passing day. All right, moving on, we've established a quorum, or we are establishing a quorum. Mr. Carmel, do we have anything to report from closed session?
No, we don't, President Farmer. Nothing to report.
Thank you very much. Anyone have any agenda review, additions or deletions? Anything out there? There's one thing that we're going to do today in preparation for major changes in agenda structure next month. So today we're going to do a little thing. We're going to reverse items 4 and 5. So therefore, managers' reports will come before board member committee and liaison reports. And that's almost right around the corner. So next we have public safety, and Commander Nelson, I do see you out there, so, and you are unmuted, so please go ahead and give your report, and welcome, and hope your day is going well.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Commander Nelson at the Sheriff's Coast Station. So I have the report for May. We had in Cambria 308 calls for service. Last year at the same time, we had 323. We had 24 calls for service regarding disturbances of note. We were dispatched to a male and female screaming at each other in the 2100 block of Blythe. Upon deputies arriving, they determined a domestic violence incident had occurred, and one of those subjects was eventually arrested for domestic violence. We had 5 calls for service regarding burglaries. Of note, we were called to the 2000 block of Main Street regarding a burglary of a storage shed at that location. In this case, 2 locks were cut from the shed to gain entry. The owner of the shed could tell items were moved. However, nothing was reported stolen at that time. That case is currently active and being investigated by deputies. We had 6 calls for service regarding thefts. We were dispatched to a theft in the 2000 block of Rodeo Grounds. In this specific case, a suspect had struck the victim with a cane and took the victim's dog. During the investigation, the suspect was identified and the dog was located. Charges are being filed with the district attorney's office in this case for assault with a deadly weapon and robbery. We had 2 calls for service regarding vandalism. We had a report of a damaged mailbox in the 2000 block of Leona in Cambria. There are no suspect leads at this time. We had 4 calls for service regarding phone scams. Of note, a resident of Cambria received an email stating that they knew the person's passwords and would use the passwords unless they paid them using Bitcoin. That did not happen, and there was no financial loss. And that is all I have for my report.
Thank you, Commander Nelson. Before I ask the board if they have any questions or comments, and I do recall within the past year and a half or so that I was getting something in the mail, in my email, I should say, maybe once or twice a week, claiming that, well, they were observing me, watching pornography and this type of thing. And if I didn't pay them in Bitcoin, that they would reveal this to the rest of the world. And this went on for about 6 months. And I would just, hit junk mail and they'd come right back. And ultimately they gave up. And I guess they must be doing this to a lot of folks. Let me ask you, when you say 308 calls for service, that's like 10 a day.
Yes, but also remember those calls for service. So that number is any call that comes into our sheriff's dispatch. So it's not necessarily something that's criminal related.
Right.
So if somebody calls in, say, and says there's a disabled vehicle on the road, we forward it to Highway Patrol, who will handle it, but it still counts for a call for service.
Right.
So those numbers seem high, but it doesn't mean that they're all, related to crime.
Right. Well, thank you. So as I say, any members of the board or staff wish to ask a question of Commander Nelson? Doesn't appear anyone does. So Commander, I hope it's oh, yes.
I had my hand up.
Okay. I'm looking over here where it says raise hand. But,
okay, do you want me to go there now? Okay.
well, you don't have to do it right now, but maybe next time. So yes, Vice President Seidel, go right ahead.
So I was just curious, the shed on Main Street that the locks were cut off of, is this the same shed that's been gone through and stolen from at least on 1, if not 2 occasions before?
I'm not sure about that. I haven't specifically heard of that, but that could be the case. But to answer your question, I don't know specifically.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Commander Nelson. And like I say, have a pleasant and uneventful weekend, you and your staff.
Thank you very much. You too. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, let's move forward and have a report from our Fire Chief, William Hollingsworth. William, how are you today, buddy?
Good, President Farmer. Thank you for letting me be here. William Hollingsworth, Cambria Fire. I have 3 general area updates for you. Let's start with the COVID pandemic stuff for the county. Per our last operational briefing, there's 376 cases that were tested positive in the county. Of those, over 300 now are fully recovered and back without any issues. So we're still noticing a very good response that way. Almost 4,100 people have been tested in the county at this point. Our Emergency Operations Center is still running and still in effect to help facilitate everything from continuing testing to patient care to eventual reopening of the economy. They have relocated that to the government center downtown. That happened a little bit earlier this month. And they have gone to what they're referring to as a virtual EOC on the weekends. And that allows the people that are participating to work from home and actually safe distance and keep a little bit, help follow those guidelines even for the people that are helping resolve this. There is going to be a follow-up testing. We just got notified in Cambria that's going to be held on June 24th and 25th. at the Vets Hall again, and this will be by appointment only. It was very successful last time with one of the areas hosting more tests than any other place in the county. You can go ahead, because it's appointment only, you can register for that at emergencyslow.org/testing, or you could call 805-543-2444, and we could put that information on the website to make sure it's available for the community. From a prevention standpoint, I told you that one of the things that we are still doing in the fire department is still continuing all of the inspections and plan review to make sure that we don't hamper any of that in the community as we move forward. We did start initially to see a downturn in that, but that started to pick up again. We're still seeing quite a bit of remodel occurring. We still do have from the fire department standpoint, all the public events and public education stuff is shut down, and we're not going to reopen that until we've been advised from the EOC and the state that would be safe to do so. We are continuing with the fire hazard fuel reduction program. So you're seeing a lot of that occurring in the community right now with people cutting their parcels. And as a reminder, the deadline for that is going to be July 15th. If you have any questions about that, feel free to call me at the office and I'd be happy to address that. And then lastly, on the prevention side, we have on behalf, the Fire Safe Council on our behalf has submitted a grant to address some defensible space issues on the hillside above the tent city area where the hardware store is. This is an area that we targeted for a grant application that we got approved on from the state that was approved but not funded. So we're trying to get we're looking at other areas for funding, and we're trying to exhaust all avenues to make that happen, just to try to increase our fire safety for the community. And then lastly, on the operational side, we had a total of 64 emergency responses for the month, which is starting as an uptick again. We did notice a big downturn during the last few months. We're still about 20 behind where we were last year. And then cumulatively at this point last year, we were at 466 emergency responses, and right now we're at 363. So you can see that there has been a little bit of a fall off. Fire season has most definitely started if you haven't been paying attention to all the stuff that's going around, and we are active participants in that. We have, as you know, we staff a water tender that's available here in the community, and by automatic and mutual aid, I've had it deployed on 3 separate fires for about 4.5 days now, from Pozo to Cayucas to Avila. So it's being utilized aggressively. And again, this is all part of the California Master Mutual Aid Plan. I use this opportunity to just remind you that we participate in that in the hope that we never have to use it on our end. Although when we've had fires in the past, that's how we get all of those resources here. So I thank you to all of you for continuing to support that process. Our personnel get out, help in putting those fires out, and gain valuable experience in the process, and then help those communities. So with that, I'm done with my report, and I'm over to you for any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Anyone on the board wish to ask the Chief any questions? I don't see anyone. So Chief, thank you so much, and happy weed abating out there in the world, and have a pleasant weekend. Okay, and an uneventful weekend also.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity to report.
You bet. Thank you. Thank you for being available.
President Farmer, excuse me, I did have a question. I'm sorry, I had my hand up, but you may not have seen it. Is the chief still here? Yes. The question has to do, I note one structure fire, and I was just kind of curious as to what that structure was, because I don't recall hearing or reading about it.
Well, to be honest with you, Director Hal, I don't know off the top of my head. That could be anything from a small fire in a garage to something a little bit larger. I know that this last month we did have a fire in a garage, and it was caused by some people doing a lot of work with linseed oil. And when you do that, and then you put all those rags together, it creates a spontaneous combustion problem and will light off, and has burned entire homes down before. So luckily that was able to be caught very quickly. I can't confirm whether or not this is the incident you're referring to, but I'd be happy to check and let you know.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you. I just was kind of curious, but it's good to hear about the linseed oil.
Yes, sir.
We have one other question for you, Chief, and that's from Director Pearson. David, go right ahead.
Thank you, President Farmer. Chief, the Legion is not holding their annual fireworks or picnic this year. So is there any special coordination that's being done to keep a sharp eye for people using illegal fireworks in our town?
There is, Director Pearson. We're actually staffing up a little bit for that around the 4th. We've already had discussions with both CAL FIRE, their law enforcement side, and then also state parks, because we know that even though the fireworks display is not moving forward this year, that doesn't mean that people won't be coming to our community, possibly expecting that, or wanting to have a party, or even to bring those items themselves. So we are pre-planning for that a little bit within the next, if it hasn't happened already, within the next couple of days, the no fireworks signs will be going up on each side of town, because as a reminder, they're per the fire code adopted in this community, all forms of fireworks in Cambria are illegal and punishable by fine. And even though those are posted and heavily marketed that way, we do have people that violate that every year. And again, the goal for the enforcement is always compliance. We're not looking for any kind of punitive action. We have had to go there on a very rare occasion, but almost always it is a simple discussion reminding people that this isn't allowed here, and they're very happy to comply.
Okay, one more question. It is barbecue season, and also, sit outside around a fire type season. Are there any municipal codes or anything that prohibit fires, like on the beach or in a fire pit at your house or anything like that?
Yes, per our locally adopted fire code, open burning within Cambria is not allowed. You can have a fire for the purpose of a barbecue and feeding, that is acceptable, but a open pit fire, like that you would sit around in lawn chairs and stuff like that, is not allowed. The commercially available units that are either gas powered, pellet fed, or have spark arresters on them are allowed. These are the types of units you would buy from Home Depot or Lowe's or Costco. Those are okay because they're not putting up the embers and the sparks that actually typically cause the problems. We do get occasionally calls on this, and we're happy to go out and investigate. And the vast majority of the time we go and look, they are people using devices that are in compliance. So that's not the issue. We do occasionally get notice that there's people that that are trying to do open burning because a fire pit is at the location. This frequently is being done at destinations like Airbnbs or VRBOs, where people might be coming from an area that aren't familiar with that. We've started to have some discussions about getting some additional information available for the people that are renting these places, to include that as a guideline from the owners to make sure that they're in compliance. And whenever we have to go out and deal with that, again, that's usually a simple discussion and reminding them that it's not allowed here, and they put it out. On the beach, technically that's state property. That is not allowed on state property either. And we will coordinate a response with state parks and go deal with that as well.
Great. Thank you for the information. Appreciate that.
Thank you, David. I see no other questions from the board or staff. So thank you, Chief, and be well.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's move on to, we're moving on to public comment. And let me just take note of the item that's way at the top of the agenda. And that is, since we're having a Zoom meeting and people are not attending in person, if any members of the public out there, wish to submit written comments to the Deputy District Clerk, Haley will be more than happy to receive your comment. And the address is boardcomment@cambriacsd.org. So that's boardcomment@cambriacsd.org. And of course, that doesn't just apply to this particular public comment area, but if you have a comment further on to any of the agenda items, you can do that then. So Haley, do we happen to have any public comment on items not on the agenda?
I do. I have 2 requests to speak, and the first person is Christine Heinrichs.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Christine. Go right ahead.
Thank you. The board's minutes include the names of those members of the public who address them at public meetings, but the minutes do not mention what anyone said. There was no comment as to what the speakers were asking of the board or what they were favoring or opposing. This leaves the minutes oddly silent on what the public's responses are to the issues before the board. I make it a point to include my comments in writing. Future minutes should reflect what those of the public who address the board are saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. And next to speak is Haley.
Tina Dickinson.
All right. Tina, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, President Farmer. This is just a very brief announcement that just occurred within the last couple of hours, I believe, on the news. Today, Governor Newsom issued a statewide order for Californians to wear face coverings in common and public indoor spaces and outdoors when physical distancing is not possible. So that's as of today, and it's mandatory. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm hoping to comment on that a little later, so thank you for starting the ball rolling on that very important item. So seeing no further public comment on non-agenda items, let's move on to agenda item 5A and the general manager's report. And Mr. Weigold, welcome aboard. Hope you're having a good day.
Good afternoon, President Farmer. A quick question on this schedule. Did you not want to go to the consent and regular business and move the manager's reports to the end? Or I got confused as to, or
We'll do that in July.
okay.
Because I know we've already reinvented that particular agenda. I don't want to start moving stuff around and confusing people. So we're just flip-flopping the manager's reports and reports from the board and committees and that type of thing.
Okay. Okay, very well. My report's fairly short today. All of our core missions proceed as normal. And all CCSD employees are healthy and safe. We continue to implement all our COVID precautions and operations, such as masks, social distancing, etc. As far as major events this past month, we'll hear a little bit more from the utility manager, but I noticed just one typo in that the district met with PG&E in our first workshop on June 2nd for the investment grade audit. And that was a very good meeting that set us up for a lot more planning and organizing required for the next step in that process. We've continued a lot of work on the coastal development plan, working with the California Coastal Commission, the CCSD Board Ad Hoc Committee, the SLO County Planning Department, as well as with staff, and making good progress there. And we'll be releasing the project description here with the board package by the end of the day tomorrow. Last but not least, a lot of work went into the budget for 2021. We'll be talking about that as a board agenda item in a little bit. And with that, unless you have any questions, I'll pass the baton over to Carlos to talk about some significant events in the facilities and resources area.
All right. Anyone on the board have any questions of our general manager? Seeing no hands raised, Carlos, go right ahead. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, board. Appreciate the opportunity. You have my report, which I believe starts on page 8, and I provided quite a bit of pictures there of all the activities that our department's been doing for the last month, a little more than a month. We've been extremely busy out there maintaining the trails on the Piscalini Ranch, widening those up to provide social distance. We've mowed them now about 3 times in the past 3 months to allow people to feel safe and to enjoy the ranch out there. We have also been doing quite a bit of tree work related to dead and dangerous trees behind homes and along trails. And we were fortunate enough that the SLO Fire Safe Council agreed to reimburse us for $20,000 of the work that you see on the ranch. We have completed that work, and we'll be submitting that paperwork to the SLO Fire Safe Council to get that reimbursement from them. You also notice that we tried to leave some of those trees as habitat on the ranch. We left a few snags out there to provide some habitat for birds so they can perch and have a place out there. Quite a bit of work's been going on fire breaks and weed abatement on the Fiscalini Ranch. We've concluded our annual weed abatement along the entire perimeter of the ranch, and we'll be doing a second pass here in about a month on the Huntington and Windsor fire breaks. We've also been doing a lot of work on invasive plant removal, coordinating with the Friends of the Fiscalini Ranch, trying to get a handle on Italian bull, mustard, and all those nasty invasive plants that just don't seem to go away. And then I also posted a picture there of a really nice, positive collaboration with the high school principal to put banners up on the street lights to honor the graduating class, co-senior class. So I worked with the principal over a little over a month, gave them the information on size, where to get them, what to order. And he was able to provide those to us. We went ahead and installed them, and our plan is to keep them there for the rest of this month, and then we'll take them down and give them back to the high school principal, who, according to his plan, is at the 10-year graduation reunion, he'll pull those up for the class so they can remember such an interesting time that they went through. And then the last picture that I have there is just an ongoing restoration project that we're doing on the Fiscalini Ranch. This is just an example. I believe it's on page 16 of the report. It's just an example of many areas that we're restoring out there on the ranch. And you can see on the left-hand side of that report a picture, 2015 December, right along the bluff trail. It's bare. There's hardly any plants out there. It's trampled. We installed some signage out there, put some cable across to stop people from walking out there. And then you can see this year in May, just the change of wildflowers and growth that you're seeing on that area. And like I said, this is just one of the areas. We've got several areas. If you walk on the Fiscalini Ranch, you'll see these signs: area closed, restoration in progress. And this is the reason why we're doing it, to restore these sensitive areas. That's my report, unless you have any questions for me.
Director Rice, you have a question for Carlos or a comment?
Yes. First of all, thank you so much for making sure that those banners happened. I don't know if we have plans, or if the high school has plans that they'd like to continue this. As a former high school teacher, I 100% behind trying to continue this tradition. I think it's a good thing for the community to see their young people who are graduating. So thank you for helping coordinate that. I would like to see that same area on the ranch that you were showing for the restoration in the same season once we get there, so that we can, a winter picture is different than what happens when it starts to bloom out there. And then I just have a question about something that I noticed on the expenditure report, but since we're talking about the ranch and the trails, there's an expenditure for trail cameras on the ranch. And just as a general rule, I'm a little uncomfortable with that. It speaks to less about, for me, it's less about the surveillance privacy issue, more about the trust issue. If we're putting them out there because we're worried people are doing something that they shouldn't be. I'd rather trust that most people are going to do the right thing rather than to monitor everything around town to catch people who are doing things outside the lines or whatever. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Sure. So as far as a picture, absolutely. We'll take pictures this winter and make sure that we can compare apples to apples and see what the restoration is there. As far as the flags, the principal did tell me that he received so many positive comments from the community that he was thinking about doing it every year now. So I'm sure he'll approach the CSD at some point and try to get something formally for that. As far as the cameras, so we are utilizing cameras out there for research. We've got several cameras out throughout the forest, taking pictures of the growth on the areas that we worked on last year. We're getting data about the temperature as well of the plants out there. So a lot of the cameras that you see out there are more for research and investigation. It's not for putting them out to see what the public is doing now. Every so often we have some vandalism of the sorts on the ranch, but that's very uncommon.
All right, thank you, Carlos. Anyone else have any questions or comments for Carlos? Anyone on the board? Carlos, I just want to make mention of two things. The first time I saw the first banner that I saw of the young student up there on the pole, it just put a big smile on my face. And like you said, you've gotten so much positive feedback from the community, especially us older folks. I think maybe we resonate with it more to see a young person and just imagining, well, the remainder of their journey is ahead of them, and just seeing their picture and being celebrated for their life at this age is really cool. And I also want to make mention of the fact of the photo, the last photo that you have there, having lived here for 33 years and walking the ranch. There's some years where the lupin and the poppies are abundant, some years where you hardly see any lupin at all. It was really nice to see this photo, so thank you so much. All right. Moving on, it appears that Ms. Duffield, yes.
I do have two members of the public who wish to speak on this item.
On which item is that, Haley?
The general manager report.
Okay, thank you. Go right ahead. The first person is?
The first person is Elizabeth Benhausen.
All right. Good afternoon, Elizabeth.
Good afternoon. I just unmuted. I have a quick question, please. And the question is about the statement about the coastal development permit for the SWF. The last sentence says, the board will receive and discuss the latest project description draft at a special board meeting on Thursday, June 25th. My question is, does this mean that you've decided against a town hall on this issue, which you had, I thought, decided some months back or weeks back? And the second part of my question is, does this mean that public participation in this meeting, this special meeting on the 25th, will be limited to 3 minutes per person, as is your usual pattern? Those are two very different ways of approaching this draft, and I assume that the description by the general manager is accurate. There will not be a decision made on this draft, but only a review and discussion of it on the 25th. So in other words, I'd like a little explanation if I may ask for it, please, because it's unclear to me exactly what you're intending to accomplish on the 25th. And I will certainly stay up later than my novel reading 7:30 tomorrow evening so that I can start reading the draft promptly on the Friday before the meeting. Thank you.
General Manager Weigold, I think she was requesting a response of some type.
Oh, I sort of took that as a board question, but I'm happy to handle it. If this, I can't answer. Go ahead, Director Rice.
we're going to cover that in the CDP committee report. We'll make sure we answer those questions as part of that report.
Very well.
I mean, you're welcome to give your input. I'm just saying that's going to be part of the CDP ad hoc committee report.
That's fine.
All right. Thank you, General Manager Weigel and Director Rice. I hope that was a satisfactory answer for Ms. Bettenhausen. Did you say
I
we have?
wrote down her questions, so I make sure we address them.
Thank you. Haley, did you say there were two requests for public comment on this item?
Yes, I have another request to speak from Tina Dickinson.
Thank
Ms.
you,
Dickinson,
Haley.
go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you, President Farmer. I observed something today that we've not seen before, and that is that the general manager looks as if he's in the same room with Pamela Duffield, and with a very little bit of distance between them. Can somebody, are they at the office, or what exactly is going on there? I'd like to know, and I think we should have been told that. And also, as a follow-up, so that Director Rice and Director Pearson can answer this for me too, that on the project description, I would like to know if it has been revised since the April 8th version that was sent to the Coastal Commission that Mr. Lester commented on. Has it been revised since then? I'm assuming it would have been, but I don't know that. Thank you.
Thank you. Would either of you wish to comment or answer Tina's question?
I'll make sure that's included. It has had revisions since the 8th.
All right, fine. Well, thank you. Thank you for answering Tina's question. And Tina, I'll just say yes, General Manager Weigold and Ms. Duffield are at the office in preparation for dealing with the agenda item on the budget. So that's what's happening there. Okay, thank you. Moving forward to, I believe the next item would be the Finance Manager report, Ms. Duffield. So it's, if you have a report, please feel free to move forward.
Thank you, President Farmer, members of the board. So I do have a correction to make related to the expenditure report, and it is on page 28 of the board packet. There were two vendors that were combined with one subtotal, and that is Liberty Composting and Liebert Cassidy and Whitmore. So the correct subtotal for Liberty Composting should be $8,591.10. And for Liebert, Cassidy, and Whitmore, it should be $5,860. So I just wanted to point that out and give those corrected totals. As far as the rest of the report, we're still continuing to have every other week meetings with the Tyler folks. Just yesterday, Director Howell and I had a conference session with them yesterday to kind of just talk about next steps and how we're going to do all the work that we need to do with Tyler, since they're not allowed to travel for the rest of the calendar year. So we've kind of been working through those details and doing other things that we can do remotely and via sending information back and forth. So we'll continue to provide details on those things as we have more information. And then we're still trying to work out a schedule for the audit, and we're hoping to begin that in the next couple of weeks or the very early part of July for the fiscal year 18-19 financial audit. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any board members have any questions of Ms. Duffield? Seeing no hands raised and no microphones unmuted, it appears no questions to be asked or comments. So thank you, Ms. Duffield, and obviously we'll be talking with you later. Thank you so much. Next is the utilities report, and Mr. Dienzo, good afternoon. Ray, oh, there you go. Thank
Good
you.
afternoon. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Director Farmer. So the utilities report for activities in May, I acknowledge that it seemed like it happened a year ago, but yeah, it was a lot of things that happened last month. A couple of highlights I wanted to report on, and I think I even alluded to it in the past. Here in our treatment plant, we're still moving forward with all the design and preparation for the upgrades for the PG relating to the PG&E project. One of the things that we did was we did an inspection of the existing tanks, which I alluded to last month, but to formalize the discussion on it, we had to clean up the tanks because the inspectors, the engineering inspectors needed to get in there and inspect it. And the good news, as I alluded to last month, is that we're able to repurpose those tanks. And it's going to save the district several $1 million, which is good news for us, which as we'll continue to hear reports about that as more project elements are more defined. Other things too around the plant here are there's been a lot of deferred maintenance that we've done. There was some bathroom maintenance that we needed to do, and also some building maintenance. A lot of these are in our shop buildings that have been deferred for several years, at least since the 90s. So I'm glad that we were able to do some of those projects. Moving on to the collection system, we have started to do some more collection system maintenance. As you know, we've hired our collection system maintenance staff, and they've been doing a great job doing some jetting and vacuuming of our collection system lines. They did a lot of that effort here in Main Street. In a nutshell, there's been a lot of debris that has accumulated over the years, some of which have not been jetted for several years. So we're finding some interesting things, and I do hope to post some of those pictures in the future, because we've also received our video camera, which will start videoing some of these efforts. So the staff is continuing to do some work on that. There's many miles of lines yet to go, but I'm hoping that we can get a good cycle of maintenance on these lines within the year or the year or two. Also in the water department, like the chief said, there's fire season. Now there's also leak season. Historically, the explanation for that is a lot of the soil has started to dry up, and as you know, like whenever soil is wet or saturated, it expands a little bit, and when it dries up, it starts to contract. Those little minor adjustments, though minor, it could cause like leaks in pipes where pipes that are starting to be weak at certain joints, or even certain pipe walls. That would trigger a leak event. And also, not only that certain voids within dry parts of the soil will start making their way up. So even though there might have been leaks that have been there prior, it doesn't show up till the soil is dry. And also another explanation is that there's more flows too. Typically May and June, we'll start to see an increase in flows. Flows mean more velocity, and more velocity in pipes can also trigger these weak points. So a couple of things, we're still continuing to highlight safe practices. As you see in the report, there's a picture there of a blazing fire, and that was because one of the gas utilities punctured punctured a gas line there, and we were able to roast a lot of marshmallows that day. Just kidding, we didn't do But yeah, I just wanted to point that out is the reason why it's very important to follow practices, and we've been doing that gratefully. And also, we've been doing also some hydrant maintenance. We've been doing on average 40 hydrants a week, and hopefully that work will continue and will continue to grow. Since there are 368 hydrants in our system, and we really need to do that on a yearly basis. So that's what we're continuing to work on that. As you can see, also some activities that that we've had as far as manual meter reads that are there on the third page 23. Just a little table there. And as far as the well data and production summary, we're continuing to track average on the well levels, and 84% of our total production diversion is coming from the San Simeon Creek aquifer. We're continuing. We finished the efforts, or well, we have not finished it, but we've entered 2020, 2019, 2018, and 2017 in our water conservation retrofits points bank. But we're still continuing to look for ways to upgrade the database, because we still need to track other things like tracking inspections and tracking those that have actually done retrofits in the past, and being able to compute credits and all of that. So that effort is still continuing, and we hope to continue to provide updates on that. As you can see, there's report retrofit verifications list there. The regulatory permits have all been submitted. It's all listed there, and there have been no notices of violations as well. And that concludes my report. So I'm also open for any questions.
Well, I see Director Rice has had her hand up for about 5 minutes. So Amanda, go right ahead.
First off, I would like to compliment you, because I'm assuming that the workloads for John Alchin and Jim Green and the other folks in the two utilities departments hasn't really reduced much, but you're getting so much done. I really appreciate the coordination efforts that you've undertaken since you've undertaken the position. The other thing, I just want to kind of scratch an itch and poke somewhere where I know we need to be getting back on the ball, which is with our FOG program, the Fat Soils and Greases program. I'm sure because we now have folks on the collection system that we are in a better position to try and get our program that was created, I think sometime in my first term of office. I want to say somewhere around 2013, 2014, about the fat soils and greases and what the commercial businesses need to be doing so that we have less jetting that we need to do. Maybe that's something that you'll be addressing next month once we have more information from the work already being done. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rice. I don't see any other. Yes, I have two requests right here from the members of the board. So Director Howell, go first there.
Thank you. Just very briefly, just two things. I was noting there's always a problem when you investigate something and you discover some stuff maybe you'd rather not have known about. So you allude to some interesting discoveries in the collection system. I'm waiting to hear later, on the edge of my seat, as to how interesting that might have been. So that's I just wanted to comment on that, because when I hear interesting in that comment, in that context, it scares me a little bit. Similar to the interesting times we're all living through. So that was one question. Oh, the other one, if you could just briefly, why is it that we get more flow in the summer? Is it that we have more usage because of the tourist season? Or I'm just asking for a little bit of clarity there.
Yeah, so so obviously this year has been really weird, to put it in a technical term. there was a reduced flow we started seeing it in March, but we really saw it in April, reduced flow. And so we were like minus 6.6 acre feet per year difference in April. And then contrast that with a plus 0.21 difference in May. And traditionally, if you look over the years, even in the last, from here, till the drought, there's always been an increase from April to May. And I think the answer is I wouldn't say obvious, but just in our area, like there's a lot of tourists and a lot of hospitality, and I'm going to guess everyone starts traveling during those times. And typically summer is also more water use because there's also more irrigation that takes place or starting to take place too. So those are the two basic explanations for around here. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Before I go to Director Pearson, I know he has his hand up. I just want to comment on something that Director Howell said. You said, regarding the collection system, I'm on the edge of my seat. Now, maybe I'm the only one that found that rather humorous, considering what the collection system is. But anyway, David, go right ahead.
President Farmer, thank you for adding a little bit of comedy along the way. That's very good.
Thanks for noticing.
Reminding us to pay attention to what's going on. I was just wanting to know, Mr. Denizio, if you've got an update on where we are with the meter replacement program.
Oh, yes. So meter replacement program, we are going to start pursuing an RFP for that beginning in the fiscal year here, because I think we've completed our investigation as to, even working with Jim as he's been working on it before he even got here. There's a lot. It's not apples and oranges per se. There's also different technologies to consider. And even technologies that we can upgrade up to for the future if we wanted to. So all of that to consider. So we've spoken with several vendors, and I think we're going to develop an RFP for that. But we're going to wait until the fiscal year to put that out.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, David. So just a couple of comments real quick, Ray. First off, just to clarify, you were talking about hydrant maintenance, and you said in speaking, and I know you misspoke unintentionally, you said you're doing an average of 40 per week, and obviously it's 40 per month. So yes. For anyone that was listening and caught that, I thought I would clarify that. Also, you made a comment with regard to the tanks. And I think when most people think about infrastructure, they think of water tanks. You were talking about the tanks at the wastewater plant, but you made the comment that repurposing the tanks will save the district millions of dollars. If you could briefly explain how that could happen. I think those were your words. I wrote them down. How can we, in what fashion can we look forward to those financial savings?
Okay, so to speak just briefly on it. So in our energy measures, or the projects, the ECMs for the PG&E, there's a couple of projects, one of which is an flow equalization basin, and another is a sludge basin. So currently there's two tanks that are there that we're using for sludge processing. We're using it for sludge digestion, but it's not being fully utilized. Those tanks that are there were actually part of a package plant that was there, but it's really not being used that way anymore. So there's a couple of cost savings there. If we were to not use those tanks, we would have to dismantle it and get rid of it. That would cost tons of money, and also having to build new tanks, that would cost another bunch of money. So John Alchin and I have talked about this, and he thinks that it's where we're saving about $4 million for that particular part of the project. So we're no doubt very happy about that because of that, I think we're going to be able to do that because flow equalization is very crucial for a plant like ours, especially when there's a lot of inflow issues, meaning that when the rains come, a lot of the rainwater gets into our sewer system and increases our hydraulic load. But we need to be able to handle those kind of surges, and the equalization basin is able to do that. So that's one. And also having, our sludge digestion is also to improve that process. But that we already do that. But to improve that process is also gonna be very helpful. So.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Okay, moving on, and I hope nobody minds. And I know that General Manager Weigold referred to this a little bit earlier. And since we have probably a fairly busy closed session, if nobody minds, let's go down and quickly do the consent agenda and then go to hearings and appeals and then regular business. And then we can come back to board member committee and liaison reports. And I hope that's okay with everyone. So
President Farmer, I was going to answer those questions from Dr. Bettenhausen had asked as part of the committee, our committee report.
okay.
But I mean, I'm okay with moving it. I just wanted to point that out because I delayed that response. I didn't think we were going to be delaying it past then. I don't object. I just wanted to raise the issue.
Okay, it just seemed like maybe doing those items first because we're kind of cramped today with closed session. But we'll make sure that when we get to committee and liaison reports that you'll go first.
President Farmer, I also have 3 members of the public that wishes to speak on 5C.
Okay, all right, well, go right ahead, Haley, thank you. And the first contributor is?
The first member of the public is Christine Heinrichs.
All right, thank you. Christine, go right ahead.
Thank you. I look forward to reading the EWS project description, which will be considered at that public meeting next Thursday. And Director Rice, I look forward to your report. I didn't realize that that was coming up. Some of the questions I have about that is that I hope will be answered in the meeting will be, why is the district planning to run it for 2 months of testing? And why the 8 hours a day, 5 days a week schedule? What information is that expected to produce? How does running the plant relate to the required in-stream flow studies? In-stream flow studies need to be done when the plant is not running to establish the baseline stream flow. Does the district have the appropriate permits required to run it and discharge the water into the existing percolation ponds? There were some other issues that didn't come up, so I will hold the rest of my comments for later, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine. Since we're a little pressed for time, Ray, hopefully you've written those questions down, and perhaps, I don't know if we'll have time later in this meeting to address them, but maybe you could answer those questions, and perhaps Ms. Heinrichs could email those questions to you and you could answer them at next week's meeting.
Yeah, I think Director Rice will comment on it, but I really hope to talk about it in more detail on the 25th. I have a lot of answers for all these questions, and I would prefer to defer to that time. So.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. That's one of the reasons I suggested that. Yes. So Haley, we have 2 other people wishing to speak on this item.
Yes, the next person is Elizabeth Benhausen.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Bettenhausen, go ahead, please.
Thank you, President Farmer. I thank Manager Genzel for his report. I would suggest in the oral report, since you mentioned that there are things being found in the cleaning out of the sewer lines, it might be useful, since that's all public property, to contact the Cambria Historical Society and see if they'd also be interested in documenting the history of Cambria. and when you have a video also, but I assume you also have the products in hand that you'll be finding. So I'm very interested in history of local places like Cambria. So if you need any volunteer help, let me know. The second thing, as you know, I emailed you this morning about the leaks explanation. I still find it implausible because of the data I've been collecting, but you must have a source before the daily monitoring was posted on the CCSD website. You must have a source of monthly usage, not only bi-monthly, which is the only thing I had access to. So I really hope, we've never heard the explanation that the tourism season starts early in May already. So there's something odd going on here in terms of the interpretation for those of us who are simply interested public. And finally, my comment is on page 23 following, there's an extensive discussion of the conservation program, so-called. And I notice, I think I'm reading correctly in the budget now that the reference is to a proposed $10,000 in this pending budget for fiscal year 2021 about a conservation database. And what I would like to ask, sir, is that in the near future, and now I can't get back to the picture to see if I'm even registering, in the near future, I would like the CCSD to give an explanation of the meaning of the word conservation. It has been used again and again in the most implausible ways, and I find that the alleged 2-in-1 is not a conservation measure necessarily. So please do not spend $10,000 on a new conservation database without, not today, sir, I'm not asking for that now, without in the very near future, however, explaining to us what in the world the CCSD means by conservation these days. I think it's inadequate in several ways, but I will not bore you in your very speedy meeting today for reasons that are clear with all the pages we've had to read quickly. So President Farmer, thank you so much for allowing me to speak on this issue.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bettenhausen. And somehow I'm trying to envision your hat at the podium at the Vets Hall. And thank you. I just kind of got that for a moment. Do we have any? I don't think we have any more public comment on this item, do we, Haley?
We do. We have one more member of the public that wishes to speak, and that's Tina Dickinson.
Oh, my apologies. Go right ahead, Tina.
Thank you, Haley. Thank you, President Farmer. Regarding utility managers, first of all, you're going to all be surprised that I actually have some praise for work that's being done. I was happy to see in my neighborhood on Park Hill, the Vector truck out and sewer lines being cleaned. That was most encouraging. I'm also pleased to hear that the hydrants are being cleaned out or tested rather at 40 a month. That's good news. I wondered about the high pressure equipment though that's being used to clean out the sewer lines when our lines themselves are so old. So if we have new high pressure equipment that is cleaning out, is there a chance then that we are having some breakages in the lines since they are so old? That was just something that popped into my mind. Another question for Mr. D'Enzo. If and when the plant is run, I would like to know what are the plans of disposing brine waste, if that will be the case. How do you intend to do that? I also would like to know about the 5-year TMDL study. I understand there are some issues. You didn't mention that at all in your report today. I would like to know about that, if you have any information. I think, and then I'm really curious in production. And I look at the production for each month. So I look at April, May, when we've had this pandemic really affecting motels, restaurants, businesses, period. How is it that the numbers in the production are not really any different from a year ago? They're almost identical. How is that possible when you've had all the restaurants shut down, the motels, hotels, and the businesses pretty much totally shut down? how can the production then be up where it was last year? So those are my thoughts and questions. Thank you very much.
Ray, I know we're, pressed for time, but maybe you could answer a couple of Ms. Dickinson's queries regarding, breakage due to high pressure in the lines, and also with regard to, briefly with regard to water production, which I believe Ms. Dickinson and Ms. Bettenhausen both addressed.
Okay, so I'll hit on these really quickly. So as far as the high pressure jetting of lines, most of our sewer lines are clay pipes. They're pretty sturdy, but yes, we are vigilant on being sure that they're not going to cause any damage. Mostly like right around the joints, but if you see what these lines that need to be jetted look like, it's like a clogged artery, just to put it kindly. So anyway, there's a lot of protection on that, but we are vigilant on that to be sure that we're not breaking any lines. Second of all, I still, like I said, I want to defer the CDP SWF questions to the 25th. I have a good answer for that. And as far as the TMDL study, it's still in draft form. It was a big deal back in 2017 because there were some issues with nitrates, but I am proud to say that John Alchin since then has made really good modifications to the plan that has improved effluent quality. And I shared this with Coastal Commission this week, and they were very happy with that because, and actually if you look on the Regional Board Public website, it shows how the TMDL reduced drastically since 2017 when those changes were starting to be made. Okay, and I'm very proud to say that because John, in coordination with Regional Board, really did a good job. And because of that, actually, it became a non-issue per se, but we are closing the loop. I am in contact with the Regional Board about this just to see, when they're going to finalize that draft. But TMDL issues have not been an issue because of the effluent quality has improved greatly because of the modifications that have been made in the last 3 years.
All right, thank you, Ray. I hope those answer the questions of the public. So, and thanks for being available, Ray. You're a little busier than usual today. Thank you. All right, let's, if no one minds, let's move on and see if we can approve the consent agenda as quickly as possible.
I just have one question, President Farmer.
Yes.
On item C, it's just a clarification question.
Uh-huh.
I remember when we had this before us, that our district council was conflicted out of the contract process with CIO, and I noticed that this time it doesn't look like that's the case. Can you very briefly comment on that, Tim or John?
Mr. Carmel has his hand raised, so Tim, go right ahead, please.
That's why I have my hand up. I still have that conflict, so I can't participate in that item.
Then I would move approval of consent agenda item A, B, and D only.
All right, well, thank you. Before we get a second on that, we have two directors that also have their hands up. So Director Pearson, go right ahead.
Yes, I had one correction to the minutes that Haley asked me to bring up at the meeting, and that was on page 44, I believe. It was recorded with 3 ayes on a particular item, and it should be 4. And she knows about it. She can make that correction.
All right, thank you, David. And Director Howell? Don, it seems like you took your hand down. So there's a motion to approve consent agenda items A, B, and D. Yeah, okay, Don, you have your hand back up.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I pushed the wrong button. I just have a question regarding the, on page 88, notice, that we file with the county. On item number 4, indicate whether the district or the candidate will pay for the printing handling of the statement of qualifications. How is that to be filled in? I think that's probably for the general manager. In other words, my question literally is who pays? Because otherwise what we write could be a blank check. I need to know whether it's the district or the candidates that are planning to pay for this.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the whole question because you were garbled on my end?
My apologies, my apologies. Okay, I'm on page 88. At the bottom of the